Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Here are major headlines this hour. Sri Lankans reject acting President Ranil Wickremesinghe after President Gotabaya Rajapaksa flees the country over days of protests. Ukraine optimistic a deal will be made on the export of grain through the Black Sea as leaders meet in Istanbul for talks. Plus, U.S. President Joe Biden lands in Israel for his visit of the Middle East. Welcome once again. We're learning there is no de facto president currently in Sri Lanka. A country's political crisis culminated in the president fleeing the country and handing over to the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe in acting capacity. But the crowd of protesters are having none of that.
Barely hours after Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled the country, hundreds of people were demanding the resignation of the Prime Minister as well and fighting street battles with riot police. Police fired repeated rounds of tear gas and Wickremesinghe, who was acting as the president in Rajapaksa's absence, declared a nationwide emergency and claimed a curfew in the city and surrounding areas. The demonstrators see him as an ally of the Rajapaksa clan and want him out. The acting president said a committee comprising the Chief of Defense Staff, military commanders and Inspector General of Police has been appointed to control the breakdown of law and order in the nation. He made the announcement in a televised speech, saying the committee had also been instructed to ensure the security and the safety of the citizens during the ongoing protests. Rajapaksa is believed to have fled to the Maldives, bringing to an apparent end this family's near two-decade dominance of the country after a massive popular uprising brought on by an economic collapse. Locals continue to flock his official residence, the presidential palace. The Air Force says Rajapaksa, his wife, and his two bodyguards left the main international airport near Colombo aboard a Sri Lankan Air Force plane. Sri Lankans blame Rajapaksa's administration for their worst economic crisis in decades. For months, they have been struggling with daily power cuts and shortages of basics like fuel, food, and medicines due to soaring inflation. Politicians from other parties have been talking about forming a new unity government, but there is no sign they are near agreement yet.
President Rajapaksa said to fled to the Maldives. As we said in that report, the country is currently providing refuge for him and his family. But Maldivians and Sri Lankan expatriates in the country are protesting near President Ibrahim Solih's house and calling on authorities to send the ousted leader out from their country's soil. Mr. Rajapaksa was said to have arrived at the Vilina International Airport in the Maldives at 3:07 a.m. today amid heavy security in the capital at the time. Reports say Rajapaksa had requested of President Solih to land in the Maldives, and the request was cleared. Rajapaksa is expected to remain in the Maldives on transit before flying to another destination yet unknown. Let's bring in managing partner and CEO at Next Year SBD and policy consultant specializing in conflict, security, governance, development, and peace. Dr. Nwokolo joins me now from Abuja. Dr. Nwokolo, thank you for joining me on the program today. You already know there is a political crisis in Sri Lanka. We've seen it build up over the days and over the last 2 weeks, brought on by the economic crisis. It spiraled out of control. Where do you think the Sri Lankan government got it wrong before now?
Thank you, Amarachi. Thank you for inviting me. I think they got a couple of things wrong. This didn't start today. This is like a balloon that was to blow open over 3 years. Mismanagement of public finance in Sri Lanka, which started with successful government before the government that came in 2019, which went into a deep tax cut, reducing VAT from 15% to 8%. And again, there's this initial inertia to act when they found out that this crisis was about happening, especially after the COVID that affected tourism, which is what brings foreign exchange into Sri Lanka. So they never act. You know, they stayed aloof for a while, and again you find out that between the ruling government and the opposition government, the inability of them to come together, the political class, to agree on how to salvage the situation contributed so much. And this, in a way, affected, you know, the foreign reserve, then the issue of the remittances that never came in. They were not able to strike a deal with IMF over a long time. And then it led to a huge issue of confidence lost by the people of Sri Lanka. And this is what we're experiencing today. So the government didn't get it in any way. They never acted when they should act. And then coupled with the mismanagement of the economy, the whole thing blew up. So I think that's what we're experiencing today.
Yeah, and quite really scary, the effects and the impacts, you know, of what's going on in Sri Lanka, the impacts of having a governance that is a government that is not working, a government that is not listening. The president himself refuses to take responsibility. He's fled and he put in charge the prime minister, who's also supposed to have resigned by now, but is in acting capacity. And even he cannot remain in that position. So he set up a committee to ensure security and safety of citizens, almost martial law imposed on Sri Lanka at the moment. And those same citizens are calling for him to resign. Would you say there is currently a legitimate government in Sri Lanka?
No, there's none, because it doesn't even fit into the constitution of Sri Lanka. And you could hear that the National Assembly, the National Legislature is planning to have an election by end of upper week or so to elect a president, which I think is what they should be doing, because presently there's a lack of confidence in whoever is there. So you even have to start building that, and for you to build that, you need to have a government that is somehow legitimate, that the people can recognize. And if you're able to get that, then you can start pulling, you know, rolling back the time by trying to make the people understand that we can get out of this. But if we keep going the way it is now, the problem will continue to balloon, because the people will continue to protest in the street, because they just don't believe anyone. So it's important that first there's an elected government that will continue to have the discussion with IMF, and then see if the confidence can return, and then see whether there'll be a remedy by people trying to bring back investment into the country.
Yeah, currently there is just a breakdown of law and order, also a breakdown of governments. For the president is in, well, we can't refer to him as a president anymore. Gotabaya Rajapaksa is in the Maldives. Ibrahim Soleh, the president, is providing some refuge for him and his family and the bodyguards as well. What do you think are the impacts that this could have, this political crisis? What impacts could it have on the region?
I think this might be huge, and it needs to be dealt with immediately, because Maldives and Sri Lanka are countries that most of their foreign exchange come through tourism. So if this conflict flows into Maldives, it will affect their economy. Most importantly is that most people from Europe and around all travel to a lot travel to Maldives for holidays and all that. And we all know that post-COVID, these countries are recovering, tourism is recovering. So if it continues, it's going to be huge, especially with most of these countries, that small island countries around the region that have borrowed a lot from China and are trying to repay their loans. So we all know that China is doing a lot of debt trap diplomacy, where if you don't pay, they take over one of your infrastructures. So we need to start dealing with that. So it's important that the West and other countries intervene now to see how they help them out so that it doesn't skyrocket into other countries. We don't want to have another neighborhood effect where it starts affecting other countries. It might continue to impact on already global economy that is on its knees because of the Russian-Ukraine crisis.
Yeah, and this is just, the people are just sitting on gunpowder, ready to explode. There are countries where, the government is already frail. Citizens have lost confidence in the government already, and they're looking to what's going on in Sri Lanka, especially countries where protests have always been stifled. What sort of lessons do you think they're learning from what's going on in Sri Lanka?
I think there's a lot to learn here, especially for emerging economies, developing economies, struggling democracies like Nigeria and the rest. One, there's need for government in power and those in opposition to work together is very important. We saw that happening. Two, issues of mismanagement of public finance is something that is key. We saw it, how it happened. It didn't start with the government that came in 2019. And when it happened, they thought that being populist in nature by cutting tax was the best way to go. But it never worked because as that was happening, it in turn affected international confidence, especially for international investors. I think that again was key. It's equally important for us to watch our early warning signals. There were a lot of early warning signals that Sri Lanka would have looked into, and they never considered it genuine, or they never considered it important. For us here in Africa, or for some developing countries, those early warnings are here with some of us. We need to look at them. There's no need trying to stop people from protesting. You can guide them to protest and protest peacefully. It could help you to feel their pulse and solve the problem than when it blows in your face and you're not prepared for it. Sri Lanka, having emerged from many years of conflict with Tamil tigers, almost was somehow a police state where the government tried to, state manage everything. But this was difficult for them to state manage, and this is what we're seeing today.
Indeed. As you said, all the signs were there. Almost forgot about the Tamil tigers and how Sri Lanka has come to this position where it even has a government in the first place. Dr. Nduwokolo, thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you.
From one political crisis to another, this time in the UK, as caretaker Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he would be leaving soon with his head held high. He was addressing lawmakers during Prime Minister's questions in Parliament today. He joked about looking for a new job and that vaccines are at an all-time high. He said the Conservative Party would unite around the winner of the leadership contest to replace him. Johnson, who won a large majority in December 2019, announced last week he would step down after a torrent of resignations from ministers and with many Conservative Party lawmakers in open revolt. His would-be successors have stressed how they would offer integrity and trustworthiness in contrast, but face questions of their own, such as why they backed Boris Johnson for so long.
Mr. Speaker, is that vacancies are at... I thank my honourable friend, and he's a great champion for Aberconwy, and it's perfectly true. It's perfectly true that I leave not at a time of my choosing, and it's absolutely true. But I am proud of the fantastic teamwork that has been involved in all of those projects, both nationally and internationally, Mr. Speaker. And I'm also proud of the leadership that I have given. And I will be leaving, Mr. Speaker. I will be leaving soon with my head held high. And one of the consolations of leaving office at this particular time, Mr. Speaker, is that vacancies are at an all-time high. And we have unemployment at or near record lows. And that is what counts, Mr. Speaker. No, they are very happy to see people languish on benefits. We believe in getting people into good jobs. And I'm looking for one.
Mr. Speaker, may I welcome the new cabinet to their places? We have a new Chancellor who accepted a job from the Prime Minister on Wednesday afternoon and then told him to quit on Thursday morning. A new Northern Ireland Secretary who once asked if you need a passport to get to Derry. And the new Education Secretary, whose junior ministers have literally been giving the middle finger to the public. It is truly the country's loss that they will only be in post for a few weeks. Now, the Prime Minister must be feeling demo happy since he was pushed out of office. Finally, he can throw off the shackles, say what he really thinks, and forget about following the rules. So, does he agree? Does he agree it's time to scrap the absurd non-dom status that allows the super-rich to dodge tax in this country?
Well, amid all that sparring in Parliament today, just before it, I must add, House of Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle today ordered two lawmakers belonging to the Scottish Party, Alba, to leave the debating chamber. Both of them had, before the Parliament's lower house finances questions, struggled to make themselves heard. They were visibly talking back at the Speaker. There he is, trying to restore order to the House.
If you want to go out,
Mr. Speaker, from tomorrow.
Sit. Shut up a minute. What's it called? Come. Give me the word in. Order! Order! I say to the honourable gentleman, give me this. I will not tolerate such behaviour. If you want to go out now, but if you stand again, I will order you out. Make your mind up. Either shut up and get out. I warn the honourable member that if there's protesting carrying out, shut up a minute. Does somebody want to at once? Give me the name.
Shout them out.
Order! Order! Sit down, you want me in the future. I now warn the honourable members that if they persist in refusing to comply with my order to withdraw, I shall be compelled to name both of them, which may lead to them being suspended from the House. Right, names. To ensure that the honourable member complies. What's the names?
Neil Hanvey and Kenny.
I order! Shut up. Shh. Neil Hanvey, I am now naming you and Kenny McCaskill to leave this chamber. Sergeant, deal with them. Deal with them. Deal with them. Just sit down. Out! No. Sergeant at Arms, escort them out. Take them out, Sergeant. Let them out. Come on.
Insurrection.
No, then let's just see if we can. Mr. Costa, you don't want to go and escort them to the tea room, do you? No, I suggest not. I think you're good and better behaved than that. Right, we'll try again after that.
Never a dull moment in the British Parliament. Well, coming up after the break. Must be the wrong picture. The trial of U.S. basketball player Brittney Griner to continue Thursday in Moscow. Stay with us. We could concentrate now on the Russian invasion of Ukraine and developments from there. Russian, Ukrainian and Turkish military delegations are meeting with UN officials in Istanbul today. starting talks and resuming exports of Ukrainian grain from the Black Sea port of Odessa as the global food crisis worsens. Turkey has been working with the United Nations to broker a deal after Russia's February 24 invasion sent prices soaring for grains, cooking oils, fuel and fertilizer. Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar announced the talks late on Tuesday. Ukraine and Russia are major global wheat suppliers, and Russia is also a large fertilizer exporter, while Ukraine is a significant producer of corn and sunflower. Diplomats say details of the plan under discussion include Ukrainian vessels guiding grain ships in and out through mined port waters, Russia agreeing to a truce while shipments move, Turkey, supported by the United Nations, inspecting the ships to allay Russian fears of weapons smuggling. Russia's invasion and sea blockade of Ukraine has stalled exports, leaving dozens of ships stranded and more than 20 million tons of grain stuck in silos at Odessa. Ukraine's infrastructure minister thinks a deal can be done and is hopeful of practical results soon. In another development, the Kremlin says it is still expecting progress over a possible European Union deal to allow Russia to transit some sanctioned goods to its Kaliningrad enclave or exclave via the EU. The governor of Kaliningrad region proposed a total ban of the movement of goods between the three Baltic states and Russia, and in response to the blockade of Lithuania. Lithuanian Railways estimated that the restrictions would apply to the equivalent of about 15% of the 3.7 million tons of cargo it transported from Russia to Kaliningrad in the first half of 2020. And that includes expanding a ban on ferrous metals, which began last month. Kaliningrad, a Baltic port and environs home to around 1 million people, was annexed by the Soviet Union from Germany after World War II and is connected to the rest of Russia only through EU territory, mainly rail via Belarus through Lithuania. Russia's defense ministry says forces have shot down 3 Ukrainian military jets over eastern Ukraine. Fighter jets destroyed a Su-25 and Su-24, both Soviet-era jets used by the Ukrainian Air Force over the Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine, and an MiG-29, another Soviet-designed fighter aircraft, in the Mykolaiv region of southern Ukraine. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier today visited the Grafenhauer U.S. Army base in a show of unity and support. In an address to the 3rd U.S. Infantry Division, Steinmeier said Germany and the U.S. were united in their efforts to support Ukraine. He told them, "We do it politically, we do it financially, we do it through humanitarian means, and we also do it militarily. This support is necessary in a situation where Ukraine is desperately fighting for democracy and freedom in its country." President Steinmeier was received with military honors by Amy Gutmann, ambassador of the United States of America to Germany. The Grafenhauer Training Center, located in Germany's southern state of Bavaria, is the largest U.S. training facility in Europe. With this visit, Steinmeier made history, as it was the first visit by a federal president. The troops stationed in Germany in more than 25 years. Back in Russia, the trial of U.S. basketball player Brittney Griner is due to continue tomorrow, Thursday, July 14. She faces drug charges that could see her sentenced to 10 years in jail in a case that highlights the already fraught relations between Moscow and Washington. Griner, a star player in the U.S.-based Women's National Basketball Association, was detained at Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport on February 17, just days before Russia invaded Ukraine, unleashing a broader confrontation with the West. She pleaded guilty to a drugs charge in court on July 7, but denied she had intentionally broken the law. Her trial formally began on July 1st at a court in the outskirts of Moscow. Russian authorities say the 31-year-old was carrying vape cartridges containing hashish oil, a substance illegal in the country. She was charged with smuggling a large quantity of drugs, an offense that can carry up to 10 years in jail. U.S. officials and a score of athletes have called for the release of Griner. She has been wrongfully detained, they say, and should be immediately returned to her family in the United States. They also say, Russian authorities that is, that there is no basis to consider Griner's detention illegal and the case against her is not political. So the Kremlin is interested in President Joe Biden's visit to Saudi Arabia and says it would not be used, hopefully, not to try to foster anti-Russian relations with the kingdom. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also said Russia valued cooperation with Saudi Arabia within the framework of OPEC Plus group of world's leading oil producers. He was answering questions from reporters in a phone conversation, telling them, "We sit within the framework of OPEC Plus agreements and we highly value cooperation with our partners, including leading partners like Saudi Arabia, who highly value our interests, our relations and our cooperation with Riyadh. And we of course hope that while building relationships with other world capitals, Riyadh will not be turned against us in any way." Now, about that visit to Saudi Arabia, President Joe Biden is making his visit to the Middle East, the first leg stopping in Israel. He's also making this trip dominated by efforts to bring a closer, that is the U.S., to Saudi Arabia and to persuade Washington's Gulf allies to pump more oil. Arriving on Air Force One at Ben Gurion Airport, whose tarmac he first trod in 1973 as a senator, Mr. Biden bumped fists with Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid and in a speech described the United States' connection with the country as deeper and stronger, in my view, than it has ever been. Biden stressed the unshakable commitment of the United States to Israel's security while restating his support for a two-state solution, which he describes as the best hope for Israel and the Palestinians. Well, this will be President Biden's 10th visit to Israel, which has stepped carefully around disagreements with Washington over Iranian nuclear diplomacy and long-stalled Palestinian statehood negotiations. But in the occupied city of Bethlehem, anti-Biden sentiments do exist. Banners are up questioning the president's position on Israeli occupation. Following President Biden's first visit to Israel and the West Bank, he will spend 2 days in Jerusalem for talks with Israeli leaders before meeting Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on Friday in the occupied West Bank. Afterwards, he will take a direct flight from Israel to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia for a first for an American president on Friday, with Saudi officials to attend a summit of Gulf allies. U.S. officials say the trip, which is President Biden's first to the Middle East as president, could produce more steps towards normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, both of them historic foes, but also two of America's strongest allies in the turbulent region. President Biden's trip aims to promote regional stability, deepen Israel's integration in the region, and counter Iranian influence and aggression by Russia and China. Well, back in the U.S., lawmakers and oath keepers have accused former President Donald Trump of inciting a mob of followers to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, in a last-ditch bid to remain in power, fueled by a chaotic meeting with some of his most ardent supporters. The House of Representatives Committee also produced evidence that aides and outside agitators knew before the riot that Trump would urge thousands of his supporters to march on the Capitol that day. The panel's 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans have used the hearings to build a case that the former president's efforts to overturn his defeat in the 2020 election constitute illegal conduct far beyond normal politics. As a 3-hour hearing ended, Republican Representative Liz Cheney said Trump had tried to phone a potential committee witness, raising the possibility he might have illegally tried to even influence witness testimony.
Hot-blooded and contentious. It was drafted on December the 6th.
I think we've gotten exceedingly lucky that more bloodshed did not happen because the potential has been there from the start. And we got very lucky that the loss of life was, and as tragic as it is, that we saw on January 6th, the potential was so much more. Again, all we have to look at is the iconic images of that day with the gallows set up for Mike Pence, for the Vice President of the United States. You know, and I do fear for this next election cycle, because who knows what that might bring. If a president that's willing to try to instill and encourage to whip up a civil war amongst his followers using lies and deceit and snake oil. And regardless of the human impact, what else is he going to do if he gets elected again? All bets are off at that point.
It makes me mad because I was hanging on every word he was saying. Everything he was putting out, I was following it. I mean, if I was doing it, hundreds of thousands or millions of other people are doing it, or maybe even still doing it. It's like he just said about that. You know, you got people still following and doing that. Who knows what the next election could come out? You know, they could end up being down the same path we are right now. I mean, just don't know.
Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird has been following the House committee hearings. Maria joins us via audio. I want to begin with, of course, the House hearings. So what we just listened to, former President Donald Trump trying to pull strings behind the scenes. What we're learning so far about what happened with the Capitol attack, how people in power even knew what was going to happen before it happened. But first off, who are these oath keepers, Maria, and what was their relationship with the former president before the attack on the Capitol?
You know, the Oath Keepers are a group, an individual organization that has been laying out a world view of this type of training, high-profile attack, breaking down the democratic process. So they have been training for many years, waiting for this type of event to occur or to be called, as they feel they were called by the president, to put forth this type of attack and action against the democratic process. So they're much broader than just the U.S. scape and landscape of politics in the scape of our government structure. They had a world view that they were looking to break down the democratic or democracies across the world. And so this was what the spokesperson considered, or the former spokesperson considered, the prime opportunity for what they had been training for many years.
And how sad. But now they're turning around and accusing the former president of inciting the mob. And we may not have known everything they said to the House committee. I'm sure you spent hours listening to that yesterday, almost 4 hours, I understand, of testimony.
Yes.
But did they explain why they're turning around now and accusing the man whom they had so gloriously praised before the insurrection?
Well, we have to face what is the reality, right? They're under seditious conspiracy charges. And those are some pretty serious charges, especially when you talk about the Senate, the House bringing forth those type of charges against individuals. And as you stated, they are now no longer affiliated with the organization. So who would be supporting them if they did not comply with the House call for them to testify and to be witnesses? And so they are probably likely in some cases looking to protect themselves from these very potentially harsh charges. And if they're convicted, what will that mean for the rest of their lives? And furthermore, they are probably under some sort of potential calls and warnings by the former Oath Keepers or the current Oath Keepers and individuals that could have their lives could be at risk. And so they're probably looking for the U.S. government to protect them. They are most likely under some sort of witness protection at this period of time. And so they're in a very dangerous situation. And we've seen this before, because oftentimes these organizations are almost kind of like, they kind of feed into and they feed the brains of individuals to believe some very far right, in this case, ideologies. And once individuals are kind of coming out of that, you see where they begin to provide insight into really what was going on. And so it's a myriad of reasons why they probably are now turning on the Oath Keepers, and obviously turning on really what the former president has said. He did not incite the riots, but they have listed out here a clear case that I think the House is going to utilize for the next steps.
Yeah, and the former leader, Jason Van Tatten Hove did say he feared what could happen as former President Donald Trump intends to run again in 2024. But let's talk about President Biden's visit to the Middle East. How much of an expectation is there on his meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince, who made once accused of journalist Jamal Khashoggi's murder?
You know, it's both the left and the right. You have individuals who are not very pleased with his decision to make that visit. And you have some that are even going as far as to saying this is going to be an embarrassment and this is not showing strength on the part of the United States. President Biden and his administration are claiming and stating that they are going there to bridge, to be a bridge, a peacekeeper between the Saudis and Israelis. And so they believe that this is going to provide some sort of peace. I mean, we have to remember we're in much different times than we were in 2019 when he pledged that he would have a strong hand against the kingdom. But we know now we are dealing with escalating gas prices. We're in the middle of being heavily impacted by the Ukrainian conflict. And so that puts a different spin on why the president would be choosing now to go forward to a visit to the Middle East. And we also know that he decided to visit Israel first. And that's a very different tone, even from the Obama administration. So I think he's hopeful that his longstanding foreign relations background will prove for those who don't believe in his decision to go forward to the Middle East, prove that this was actually a better decision and that it will provide great impact not only for the U.S., but for the rest of the world.
Oh, he's not much liked in Bethlehem, is he? I don't know if you saw those banners while I read the story. They're concerned, about the U.S. position on a two-state solution to the Palestinian question of statehood. The U.S. has clearly supported Israel on this. But is the president looking to smoothen relations with Palestine? I know he's meeting with President Mahmoud Abbas on Friday. But how does that compare to his position, his standing with Israel, despite, the differences in theories concerning who owns which land between Palestine and Israel?
The Palestinian-Israeli conflict has been one that the U.S. has been a long supporter of trying to find a way to bring peace. President Biden would not be the first president to try to come in and provide some sort of a mediation in that area. And so I do believe he's going to follow previous administration practice in that area. I think he's going to do nothing different than what we've seen in previous presidents that have gone to meet, whether it's with the Palestinian president or with the Israeli. But I think that he is hopeful, obviously, to address that as well. But I think the greatest concern is really his visit to Saudi Arabia.
Indeed. I will keep our eyes on that, Maria. Thanks for giving us the brief. But still ahead on the program, rising temperatures in Europe also calls for concern for not just people but animals as well. We'll talk about it later. Stay with us. Welcome back. Iran will not retreat from its rightful and logical stance in its nuclear impasse with the United States, so says President Ibrahim Raisi. A day after France warned there were only a few weeks left to revive a 2015 nuclear deal. A pact seemed near revival in March, but 11 months of talks between Tehran and major powers in Vienna were thrown into disarray, chiefly over Iran's insistence that Washington remove its elite security force, Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, from the U.S. foreign terrorist organizations list. In an effort to overcome the impasse and narrow the remaining gaps, Tehran and Washington held indirect talks in Qatar last month, but they ended without progress. Since the Doha talks, Iran has questioned U.S. resolve to save the pact, while Washington has said Tehran has added new demands unrelated to discussions on its nuclear program during the latest talks. Just yesterday, France said it was only a few weeks before the window of opportunity to salvage the 2015 pact would close, accusing Tehran of using delaying tactics while forging ahead with its uranium enrichment program in the country. In health matters, the world's first malaria vaccine was hailed as a historic milestone, but months later, A lack of funding and commercial potential is hampering efforts to deploy the shot to millions of African children who desperately need it.
Kenyan mother Rebecca Idhambo Kwanya needed no convincing to take part in the pilot program for the world's first vaccine. Her oldest son, 4-year-old Brittney, had frequent bouts of malaria since birth, unlike her youngest son, 18-month-old Bradley, who was vaccinated in the pilot program.
I have 2 sons. My elder son has 4 years and 8 months, but the smaller one is 1 year and a half. Yeah, my elder one was not vaccinated and he was sick on and off. He had malaria today, tomorrow no malaria, the other day malaria, the other day no malaria. But the smaller one, he gets the vaccine and he was not even sick. There should be more vaccine maybe to our nearest health center, because sometimes when you go to even our Jolomina health center, you find that there is no vaccine, or you will be told, come on Friday, come on Monday, come on Friday, come on Monday.
GSK has donated 10 million doses to pilot programs in Ghana, Kenya and Malawi, and less than half have been shipped so far. The countries plan to expand campaigns this year and the next, using a mix of the remaining donations and purchased shots.
The piloting of the RTSS malaria vaccine in 3 countries, Kenya, Malawi and Ghana, started in 2019. And by last year, 1.8 million children had received the vaccines. Those are 1.8 million children who are eligible to receive the vaccine, and therefore they should be around the age of 6 months. So we are hoping that when the vaccine, because now it's recommended by WHO for use in protecting young children in sub-Saharan Africa against malaria, that when it's rolled out throughout the areas where malaria is a big problem, then we should have several millions of children who will receive this vaccine starting next year when it becomes widely deployed in these areas where malaria is a big problem.
GSK said the World Health Organization decision to collect additional data on safety and effectiveness from the pilot programs had added years to the launch process, during which it had to idle a dedicated production facility. Some officials and donors are hoping a second shot being tested by Oxford University may prove better, cheaper, and easier to produce in bulk. International Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, is currently the only significant funder for a wider Mosquirix rollout. One problem is a lack of demand for malaria vaccine in wealthier parts of the world. The huge profits pharmaceutical companies can generate there is how they say they can make products available for cheaper in poorer countries. But Mary Hamill, head of malaria vaccine implementation at the World Health Organization, says the COVID pandemic has shown how quickly things can move when there's a political will and funding. But without the finance and commercial viability, millions face being denied the protection of a vaccine against a disease that kills a child every minute.
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic is still very much around, with a highly transmittable Omicron variant BA.5 set to become dominant in most of the EU by the end of this month. There's a new wave of COVID-19 cases across the Union. That's the EU that I'm talking about. And at this stage, no final decision has been made on which Omicron variant, BA.1 or BA.4 or BA.5, the autumn vaccine campaign should use, since none of the shots have yet been endorsed by the European Medicines Agency. Earlier this week, EU health agencies recommended a second COVID-19 booster for everyone over the age of 60, as well as medically vulnerable people, to combat the new rise in COVID cases.
The start of a new widespread COVID-19 wave. We have seen an increase in the past 3 weeks, an increase in in case notification rates and as well as an increasing trend in hospitalizations. And in several EU EEA countries, and we project that by the end of this month, the BA.5 sublineage will be the dominant variant in most of the EU countries. So what we are seeing right now signals for us the start of a new widespread COVID-19 wave across the European Union.
First of all, in terms of quantity, we will have enough vaccines available, as I say, to protect the European population and very likely also to donate outside of the EU. First element. Second element. Whatever bivalent vaccine is finally bought or available in Europe, it will be a good vaccine. It will be a better vaccine, even against BA4, BA5.
And here they come, the Bulls of Victoriano del Rio, relentlessly sprinting through Pamplona's narrow streets, forcing runners to give their best to avoid being run over by the almost 600-kilo animals. Don't try this at all. A man was thrown up in the air when one of the bulls charged behind him in a stretch. Emergency services took 5 people to hospital with contusions. The bulls crossed the more than 2,600 feet course in just 2 minutes and 14 seconds. Returning this year, the San Fermin Festival has once again attracted its usual crowd of international and domestic thrill seekers and spectators who enjoy the frenetic, wine-fueled atmosphere. At least 16 runners have lost their lives over the years, the last casualty being a man gored by a bull in 2009. Really dangerous, but well, over in a zoo in Madrid, Spain, incidentally the same country, fish, beef and fruit popsicles are on the menu as zookeepers attempt to keep animals cool while temperatures in the Spanish capital rising, surpassing 40 degrees Celsius in the second heat wave of the year. A star attraction, Panda Beijing, there he is, enjoyed watermelon popsicles. 50 kilos of fresh bamboo were not enough for Bing Bing, which means star of ice. He prefers to accompany his meal with frozen fruit to battle the extreme heat that is hitting the Iberian Peninsula for the 4th day. Fellow animals like lions, rhinos, turtles and seals all devoured frozen popsicles made of fruit, beef or fish, depending on their diet. A part of Extremadura, Andalusia and Galicia regions were on red alert for extreme heat this week. The Spanish Meteorological Service says temperatures could surpass the previous record of 47.4 degrees Celsius for all of Spain, as set in August 2021, and of 40.7 degrees Celsius in the capital, Madrid. The country was also facing a high risk of wildfires, with the regions of Extremadura and Castile and Leon the main concerns. A warm summer sunshine combined with a hot air front from North Africa has sent temperatures soaring, according to the meteorological forecasters. And the heat wave, they say, could last until July 18. Back in June, Spain has weathered the earliest heat wave since 1981, according to AMET, temperatures surpassing 40 degrees Celsius in parts of central and southern Spain. But at least they get to eat a balanced diet while maintaining some cool in this hot weather. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi.